Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Oak Park Trustee Candidate Forum. My name is Peggy Kell. I'm the Voter Service Chair for the League of Women Voters of Oak Park and River Forest. The National League just celebrated its 101st birthday on February 14th, and our local league was established 97 years ago. Our mission is to educate community members on local, state, and national issues so they can be more informed voters. This is our fourth candidate forum for the April 6th municipal elections. Our next forum will be Saturday, February 27th for the Oak Park Elementary School District 97 School Board. You can still register for that forum on the library's website. Many thanks to Rashmi Swain and Bridget Opthalt from the Oak Park Library for all their technical expertise and partnership. Candidates, here are the ground rules. Candidates will be given 1 minute opening and closing statements. After opening statements, the same questions will be asked of each candidate with 1 minute to answer. Order of speaking will alternate and statements and questions will be timed. I, as moderator, will read the questions and that were prepared in advance. As moderator, I'll make sure questions are appropriate and avoid duplication. So to start off with our opening statements, we're again going alphabetical. Candidates, are you all ready? All right. Anthony Clark, you're going to start first.
Yes, again, thank you all for holding this. Everybody that played a role is truly appreciated, and thank everyone who's taking time out of their schedule to be here this evening to learn about these wonderful candidates vying for seats on the Oak Park Village Board table. My name is Anthony Clark. I'm an Oak Park resident, Oak Park and River Forest High School teacher, founder and director of an Oak Park-based nonprofit, and community organizer looking to hopefully be one of your next representatives at the board table. Why am I running? My family did not have generational wealth. They literally came to Oak Park with nothing, and they truly believe that service to others is the rent you pay for room here on this earth. So just as they sacrificed to provide me with better, I'm looking to sacrifice and utilize my privilege and power to truly create equitable sustainability. When we're talking about reimagining public safety, the environment, affordability, and the ability to age in place, I think we need true representatives that are tapped into the community, understand the community, and are looking to empower others as well as commissions and all stakeholders to truly move our community forward. So service to others is the rent you pay, and I'm looking forward to paying rent with all of you to improve our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Chibuike?
Hello. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I thank you so much for having us. League of Women Voters, I appreciate everything you do and what you stand for. So I'm truly honored. And I can't thank you all enough for this opportunity. Oak Park is the home that I grew up in. I've lived here for over 30 years. My parents came to Oak Park shortly after moving to Chicago. My parents were immigrants from Nigeria, so I'm first generation here. My family as well. After college, I came back and started my family. I have a beautiful wife and two awesome, amazing kids that are going through our public schools currently. And what I love about this town that we live in is the diversity, but I want the opportunity to have diversity with equity. I want to have the opportunity to have a government that listens to us, because a government that listens to all of us can best serve each of us. So I'm truly excited for the opportunity to, be your next village board candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. Juanta Griffin?
Hello, everyone. My name is Juanta Griffin. I'm a lifelong resident of Oak Park. My parents moved here in 1978. I decided to run for, well, thank you everyone for being here. I decided to run for village trustee because I believe that our board of trustees should have members that represent all of Oak Park, not just one portion of Oak Park. And that means renters, that means middle income earners, that means Black people, that means women, that means everyone. And it shouldn't be run by one segment of people. So I'm here. I'd like to give that perspective to the board. I'd also like to make sure that this community is representing everyone and not just a certain demographic of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen?
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to Oak Park Public Library for putting on this event. Look, we are living at an unprecedented time. Who among us is not nervous about next year or next decade? I'm running for village trustee to help us through this time because I believe the better times are ahead for Oak Park. But it's going to take us all working together to get there. I have been a part of 2 citizen commissions, the Environment Energy Commission and the Community Development Citizen Advisory Committee, where I've led initiatives to take action on climate change and affordable housing. I've also been on several nonprofit boards, including Thrive Counseling Center, the Center for Healthcare Innovation, and my favorite, the MIT Crew Alumni Board. In all of these organizations, I've helped bring growth and transformation. Now I want to bring those skills to bear on our community, to help our village recover, to make the government more responsive, and to reimagine what Oak Park can be like in the post-pandemic world. I hope on April 6th, you'll allow me to be your trustee so I can bring you the very best that I can.
Thank you. Ravi?
Thank you, League of Women Voters and the community members attending. As a community, we are facing several challenges simultaneously: rising property taxes, unstable property values, small business closures, and budgetary shortfalls. Add to that persistent socioeconomic disparities and divisive politics. And it feels like Oak Park is at a breaking point. We are at the start of a long road to recovery, and 2020 has left us with very little gas in the tank. I'm running for Oak Park trustee because I'm confident that I can help. I believe the strength of my ideas, the depth of my personal and professional experiences, and my thoughtful leadership style can mend the division and improve people's lives right here in Oak Park. And I'm committed to doing that. I stand for inclusive, visionary solutions like Takeout 25 that will build back our community stronger over the coming years. Tonight, I hope to listen carefully and share my thoughts on issues you care about the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucia?
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us this evening. My name is Lucia Robinson, and I am running for trustee for the Village Board. I grew up watching my grandfather learn to read English by reading the Chicago Sun-Times every morning. And from his seat at the kitchen table, he would share with us the world's events. And while we didn't understand everything he shared, what we did understand was that anyone could be involved and engaged in their community. Civic engagement had no barriers in my grandfather's house. When we moved to Oak Park, I attended Ascension and then OPRF. And my husband and I have raised our 3 children in Northeast Oak Park for the last 14 years. And one of them currently teaches spoken word at the high school. Professionally, I've worked as a regulatory attorney for over 20 years with a focus on government regulation and how it applies to real life business practices. And so it is with my grandfather's example, the deep roots I have in this community, and my legal skill set that I am running for trustee to help Oak Park live up to its potential.
Thank you. All right, candidates, we're going to start with our questions. If at any time it's your turn to answer and you want me to repeat the question, just ask. There's no problem with that. After 6 people, sometimes the thought can get lost. So just ask me to repeat it and I will read it again. And Chibuike, you're going to start with our first question. How important is it to you to work together as a group while speaking your opinion and disagreeing with others in a respectful way?
I believe it's extremely important to make sure that we are listening to each other's voices. Being a mentor, being a coach, being the head of part of my department in previous jobs, it really was imperative that we were able to work together as a team. It's something that I've learned from a very young age, being in the Boy Scouts. It just always showed us that there was a team effort, that there was something bigger than ourselves. And the same thing goes with this community when it comes to the village board table. We're supposed to be the voice that amplifies the community and that brings everyone together to make sure that we're making an informed decision for the best of this community. So we have to make sure that we always listen to each other, but that we are strong in our beliefs and that we still remain true to who we are in our core. Although that sometimes we may have disagreements can also lead to immense amounts of change. And we are going to have disagreements moving forward and, clearing the air from the past.
Thank you. Juanta?
Yes, I believe that collaboration is important, and to be able to collaborate with others, you have to listen, and that you can disagree without being disagreeable. So being respectful, practicing active listening, that's the only way to get anything done. I'm the mother of 3 teenagers, and that's the only way we get anything done in our house, listening to each other and collaborating with each other, and not listening to rebuttal, but listening to have solutions and understand the task at hand. So I believe that being respectful, collaborating, and sitting across the table with people disagreeing without being disagreeable is a key to making any progress.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks for this question. I think we've all seen a lot of divisiveness on the board as it is today. And I think that one of the things that is going to be important for all the trustees that come on the board is to find ways to create that dialogue that we all really wish would be there, one where it's productive, one where we're focused on solutions, as Juanta said. I think part of that is also talking to each other as humans and not losing our humanity, and making sure that if someone has a difference of opinion, that difference of opinion is definitely rooted in something, and you acknowledge that that person has a reason why they're bringing that to the table. And once you do that, you can actually work together to try to solve it. I do expect there's probably going to be a lot of time outside of normal board meetings where we'll be meeting one-on-one to try to get to understand each other's perspective. And that's going to help us, I think, to have much more respectful dialogue going forward.
Thank you. Ravi?
So I would like to both listen and be heard at the board table. So my whole point of approaching the board would be to frame or to create solutions that help the community or enable the community, that are in the best interest of the community. So for that, I think diverse points of view are critical to doing that. And one thing that I've learned from my professional experience is if you have disagreements or you have a different perspective, then you peel that back to understand the common interests behind that, and then come to an understanding, and then build back from there into solutions that really serve the community. So that would be my approach. So to really listen, go back, understand the underlying interests, and find common ground, and then build back solutions that are in the best interest of the community. And that's how I plan to serve.
Thank you. Lucia?
One of the core themes of my campaign since it began is that trustees should listen and then lead. And it's got to come in that order. Listening has to come first before leadership can be effective. Divisiveness won't work. And so I think it is with an understanding at the board table that there is more than one way to do things, and that disagreeing doesn't negate or take anything away from your own position. We have to learn how to disagree in a way that's respectful, in a way that's understanding, and in a way that's ultimately productive. And I do believe by following that core theme that trustees should listen and then lead, we can do that at the board table.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, thank you for this wonderful question. And in reference to leading, I think it's extremely important to start with an extremely strong foundation. I spent 6 years in the United States military active duty, and I served with and had to lead individuals from various socioeconomic backgrounds, demographics, and political viewpoints. But one thing we had in common was the foundation that we wanted to protect other soldiers and do the best for the Air Force. And I think that's similar at the trustee table. We may not always agree, but I think we all share that foundation of wanting what's best for the community of Oak Park. And when you recognize that, when you have that commonality, you could then steep yourself in intergovernmental and intercommunity collaboration, in tapping into empathy and understanding not only where that representative is coming from, but also the individuals that believe in and support that representative, because this role is so much bigger than I. This is a we movement. And when we get to the table, we'll be representing so many wonderful individuals within this community. So identify that foundation of improving the community, from that tap into empathy and move forward together.
Thank you. First, the second question, we're going to start with Juanta. How do you feel about the way that residents, elected officials, and citizens commissions and the Oak Park Economic Development Corporation share power in making development decisions in Oak Park?
I said, could you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. How do you feel about the way that residents, elected officials, citizens commissions, and the Oak Park Economic Development Corporation share power in making development decisions in Oak Park?
Well, I think as long as we incorporate the community in that equation, I think that would be a better outcome. I think that when we're making any decisions about our community, especially when it comes to development, that the community should really have some sort of say in the process. And I think that could be done through my community engagement process, which is on my website. I mean, there are 7 steps to this, and there are several ways to involve community members and stakeholders in that process. And we erase community members as stakeholders when we just do things that when we don't invite them to the table. I mean, listening to them, their emails, and reading their emails at the board table is one thing, but having them have an active participatory role in the process is a better way to make decisions with things involving our village in terms of development.
Okay, thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks for this question. I think when we talk about the interplay with all the parties you talked about, a lot of it goes back to frustration, I think, with the Oak Park Economic Development Corporation, or the EDC. In the last Thursday's Plan Commission meeting, the EDC or the developer was presenting to the 203 South Marion project, and it was clear that there was a lot of things that had already been worked out, and that the residents were only getting the chance to really kind of voice their opinion late in the process. I think there has to be a much more transparent process with the EDC. What I would suggest is that as a board, we work with the EDC to chart some clear directions, maybe even some micro visions within Oak Park of what we think the community likes to see, get community input on those so that the EDC feels like it has a better foot going forward, and that it avoids a lot of frustration further down the road.
Thank you. Ravi?
Thank you, Peggy. So all these entities are really important elements to a well-functioning government, and especially in the case of development. So they all have their respective roles, and they all have their boundaries as well as it pertains to development. So the board represents the residents of the community in these decisions. The commission is more of an advisory function for the board because the board can't be experts in all the different topics. And the OPEDC is more of an execution engine to enable the decisions made by the village. Right? So everybody has got their role, and the balance is not a static balance, right? It needs a shift based on the kind of decisions that needs to be made. So now we are part of a representative democracy. This is why residents, you all need to be really, really careful in making the decisions and informed choices about who represents you in these decisions. And on top of that, we definitely need to look at a very transparent process where there is input and participation right through from start to finish. Both these things are important. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucia?
I think there are 2 ways in which that balance that both Ravi and Stephen have spoken of can be created. One is development decisions need to be set very clearly and within their preset board goals by the board so that clear direction can be given to the OPEDC. I think secondarily, the OPEDC needs to have more accountability to the board. That can happen through regular reporting and a greater level of transparency about projects that are underway so that trustees aren't getting sort of the development decisions and the process and details later on in the process when it may be too late or maybe too difficult to change course. And so those are 2 ways in which I'd like to see that greater balance that my co-candidates have spoken of.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, thank you for this extremely important question. As it currently stands, I believe there's an imbalance in power in reference to our 20 commissions that exist. We're discussing the EDC and the board that makes decisions and push for its policy. There's so many citizens and stakeholders within this community that feel marginalized and ignored currently. So when I think we're steeping ourselves again in intergovernmental and intercommunity collaboration to push forward ideas and to push forward policies, we always have to look through an equitable lens, and we have to have a decision-making checklist. Any decision made or anything that's discussed We need to ensure that, again, has the community been properly educated? Has there been proper outreach? Have we discussed with the given commission that this involves? And are we making the best informed decision possible? Because even if we look at the Pete's development that's currently on the table, there's so many small business owners that feel like they were not talked to, they were not listened to, and even the studies that were done weren't truly done and steeped in true equity to truly show how a new Pete's would impact their small business community. So we have to steep ourselves in collaboration and transparency.
Thank you. Chibuike?
Yes. I would start off by saying, yeah, there needs to be a level of equitability that goes throughout all of these different lenses that are looked at, whether it goes to, the Oak Park, the EDC, whatever groups there are that are going to be partaking in these decision-making processes. It first needs to start with our community. And then from our community process, our community needs to have a vision. From that vision, then we can start to say, hey, Oak Park is a desirable place. Developers are going to want to come here. It's not like they're just going town to town all the time. They have to have a place that they want to work in. Oak Park is a place that they want to work in. So we need to set the ground rules for what we're looking for. We need to make sure that this is something that we've agreed upon as a community, that we then take to the board table, and the board can iron out those views and make sure that we are our best coming to get what from those developers what we need, and that those things are equitable for this community.
Thank you. Stephen, you're going to start this next question first. Everyone running for office claims to be in favor of equity. What does equity mean to you, and what concrete actions do you support to further equity?
That's a great question. So equity and diversity are things that have been very important for me for all of my life. Actually, I started my career as an enroader. For those that don't know, it's a program that gives scholarships to minorities, my father being Puerto Rican. For me, equity really means trying to give opportunities to those that wouldn't necessarily have those opportunities presented to them. I'm proposing for us in Oak Park that we develop a specific equity citizen commission to help us define what the appropriate metrics are for our community, and then hold the board accountable to incorporate those equity metrics. There's other aspects of equity too, which is making the village board much more accessible to people of different backgrounds and different lived experiences. And we can also start to do things like actually force ourselves to really try to think through things from an equity lens more frequently, and looking at more options when we have resolutions or ordinances on the table.
Thank you. Ravi?
Thank you, Peggy. For me, equity means everybody has equal opportunity to access resources, equal access to opportunities, and unbiased allocation of resources in a community. So from that perspective, if you take a village like Oak Park, what are the concrete things that I would do to drive equity is obviously create the opportunities, but then more at the village level, I would take the board and its decision closer to the community to reflect the community participation, so enable community participation into board decisions. The second thing I would do is the commission structure. I would actually strengthen the Citizens Relationship Commission to be more reflective of equity. And then within the village, I will change the community relationship department to more of a diversity, inclusion, and equity department, consistent with most of the corporates and the non-governmental agencies that I've come across globally.
Thank you. Lucia?
I think equity needs to be a consistent framework through which we do pretty much anything at the village board. And that's both the framework in terms of the intent of the programs and policies we put forward, but also its impact. And I think that last piece is sometimes that gets missed, I think often unintentionally. So I think with respect to specificities in terms of intent, that I think is fairly clear. We want to make sure that we are not putting forth programs and policies that, of course, don't intend to be inequitable. But I think the second piece can be a little tricky in terms of disparate impact. There can be things that we want to implement, and they may have an unintended effect that throws off the equity balance. And to address that, what I'd like to see is I'd like to see us take opportunities to do a look back at some of our programs and policies to see post-implementation, are they working? Are they not working? If not, why? And how can we make them work?
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, another wonderful question. When we're discussing equity, what are we really discussing? We're talking about fairness and justice. And to me, equity is the greater empowerment of those that have experienced systemic marginalization through the support from those in the community with greater privilege and power. I have a level of privilege in this community. And when we look how our current village board operates and engages our commissions, and then our commissions and village board engages the community, there's a lot of inequity that exists. There's a lack of transparency. There's a lack of efficient and effective communication. We can no longer operate with a model where we expect individuals to come to us and access the information. We have to go where people are as representatives in this community. We have to invest ourselves in educating the community as well as being educated from the community. So everything that we do must be looked through an equitable lens, whether we have checklists, whether we create commissions. Each and every decision made has to have a checklist to ensure we identify whether we're talking about small business or taxes. Those that are disproportionately impacted the most have a voice and are empowered.
Thank you. Chibuike?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Absolutely. Everyone running for office claims to be in favor of equity. What does equity mean to you, and what concrete actions do you support to further equity?
First I'll say equity to me is bringing power to those who have had a lack of power, resources, or ableness. It is making sure that we are looking out for those who have historically been marginalized and those who have not had a voice to speak for them. Equity is in turn flipping that and not necessarily saying we are taking away from those, but we are bringing power to everyone to an equalness. And when we do say things like that, I like to say instead of there being just statements, we need to bring these statements to life through policy. We need to make sure that we are making an effective change that is lasting, that is not just a change that we say in statements. Okay, actions actually have to happen for us and to make a lasting change for Oak Park. We've continuously run circles around this, but we've never actually addressed this head on. Equity is finally looking at that lens, seeing where we have disproportionately affected those and making sure that we make these things right.
Thank you. Juanta?
And so the way I explain equity versus equality to my 8-year-old is that equity is meeting people where they are, and equality is giving everybody the same thing. So I think first we have to understand that just because something is equal doesn't mean it's equitable, because we all have different needs and we're all coming from different spaces. So meeting people where they're at is extremely important. And when looking at things through an equitable lens, what we're saying is we have to look at where they're lacking to bring them where they need to be or what they need. And the first way to do that is to ask people what they need. It's to be informed, to make data-driven decisions, to be strategic. We can't keep, and we have to be actionary. We can't keep making equity statements and equity plans that don't have action behind them. So we need to know what's missing, to know what the people need, and then meet them where they are to bring them to where they need to be. And I think that's what's lacking in our government, is that we don't have the perspective of the board to meet that the board isn't equitable, so it can't practice equity, period.
Thank you. The next question, Ravi, you're going to start first. What do you think is an acceptable rate of tax growth that you would work to achieve?
So I personally believe that what our heart wants needs to match with what our wallet can afford. So every decision that we make, and especially so now that we are recovering from a pandemic, these decisions become even more acute. We're going into a budgetary deficit. We'll have really, really tough decisions to make. So my commitment would be to stay consistent with that sentiment in terms of being fiscally responsible, use your judgment and a lot of discipline to make those decisions in a thoughtful manner. So while it's very difficult to put a number, a tax rate behind it, which will be irresponsible to commit to a number at this stage, But what I will say is all my actions will be consistent with that sentiment. I come from a very fiscally responsible thought process, so that it'll be consistent with that.
Thank you. Lucia?
Can you repeat that, please?
Absolutely. What do you think is an acceptable rate of tax growth that you would work to achieve?
So I think in line with the fiscal responsibility sentiment is the realization that some of these budget decisions that are going to be coming up at the next budget turn are going to be very, very, very difficult. I think we've gotten hit pretty hard by COVID, and one of the ways we've been hit, all of us just communally, is from a financial perspective. And so while there needs to be, I think, some tough budget decisions coming up, I think this point of flexibility is one that cannot be understated. And so in addition, going hand in hand with making some of these really tough budget decisions, particularly also with respect to taxes, we need to have trustees in those seats that are able to understand both the causes and the implications of that, and are willing to make those tough decisions and understand its implications as well.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, definitely. We mentioned earlier about the ability to age in place, and lack of affordability is such a huge issue that's impacting homeowner and renter alike in our community, as well as small business owner and entrepreneur. We know our tax issue starts at the state level. Illinois is a state that relies heavily on property taxes to fund public schools, which is inequitable. But now we're facing that burden as taxpayers within this community. So I know last we had 3% tax levy. When you look at the village board, and when you count that with pensions, we're at about 17%. Of course, we have D200, D97, so on and so forth. So again, working with stakeholders, working in intergovernmental and intercommunity support, I think the lens we need to look through as representatives is how do we give tax relief to the community? I truly believe that we need to look at the data, qualitative and quantitative, address all of these issues, analyze and research. What are we paying into that's ineffective? What are we paying into that's effective? What are we paying into that can be modified, with always the goal to try to provide tax relief to our citizens?
Thank you. Chibuike?
All right. Yeah. So yeah, taxes is something that I've heard my parents complain about it when I was a little kid living here in Oak Park, and never really could actually put my finger on it until we became homeowners and really understood what my parents were pulling hair out for. So I think here in Oak Park, we face very unique problems because, as Anthony said before, we rely heavily on property taxes to sustain us. And we are not a village that has gotten to the level of our small business community being able to be one of those primary factors to help us balance that out. So what's going to need to happen is we need to get more creative, not just intergovernmentally, but we also need to actually put our money where our mouth is and lift up our small businesses. We need to make sure that we're giving more opportunities and making Oak Park more of an attractive location for businesses to want to stop and set up shop. We're going to need to continue to work together, even as a board now. Whoever becomes members, we have to work together to figure these problems out for the future of Oak Park.
Thank you. Juanta?
Okay, so I'm a renter, and a lot of people think that renters don't pay taxes, but we absolutely do, because every time taxes go up, my rent goes up. Last year, my rent went up by $400 in one increase. So I feel the burden of taxes in our community, and I will make sure that if elected, that I will do everything that I can do in my power to make sure our taxes stay low. And I think 3% so far is fair, but I would also look at our spending, because moving forward after COVID, we're going to go into some lean times, and we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And I think part of controlling our taxes and having sustainable housing and affordable housing is also to control our spending, and being fiscally responsible is going to be part of that solution. So I'm absolutely in agreement with being fiscally responsible, with diversifying our tax revenue and reinvesting in small businesses to offer help where there is, but we also have to make sure that we're being responsible with our spending as well.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks. maybe just love to say if I could keep it at 3%, I'd love to keep it at 3%, right? But I think there's, as Lucia and Ravi pointed out, it's going to take a lot of fiscal responsibility. The challenge that we have, if we look at how our general fund is funded, a huge portion of it does come from property taxes. Even if we took all the sales tax and we doubled the sales tax, that's not going to come up close to making a big dent in our general fund expenditures. So I think we have to be realistic about where we're going to be getting the money from to be able to fund our village going forward. And we're not talking about funding new projects, and we're talking about things that are important to us, like keeping the roads paved. So I'm going to suggest that we potentially look at other revenue sources, similar to what Chibuike said, but I think we can try to help our businesses grow more, but then we can also start looking at a lot of the federal loans that are potentially coming our way under this next COVID relief package to help alleviate some of the tax increase.
Thank you. Lucia, you're going to start this next question first. If the resolution on defund the police is successful, how would you interpret its implications for Oak Park? If it's not successful, how would you interpret the results?
So in my view, the referendum is not written with sufficient clarity. And so I think we still need to have the conversation regardless of the outcome. I think we should review police practices and ensure that our police are operating within the standards of community policing and address any issues that may arise as a result of that. I would not be in favor of decreasing the police force in any way that negatively impacts public safety. And I think that these are conversations that need to happen openly, honestly, fairly, with the idea that I mentioned earlier that trustees should listen and then lead. And I think that they need to happen inclusive of our police force as well, especially if we're going to be looking at their own data to try to analyze and try to come up with some solutions.
Thank you. Let's see, Anthony?
Yes, can you restate the question real quick, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Peggy.
If the resolution on defund the police is successful, how would you interpret its implications for Oak Park? If it's not successful, how would you interpret the result?
Yes, to me, again, making an I statement based upon the intent of this non-binding resolution that's being placed before us that we're voting on. No matter the results, I don't believe that it's successful because I don't believe that, as the current representatives are, they didn't invest themselves in true education. I believe we always have to tap into and invest ourselves in working with the community to better educate ourselves, better educate the community to make an informed decision. And when you can make an informed decision, then you can take that information and move forward. I don't think the decision made either pro or against based upon this referendum as it currently stands will be an informed decision. So many different individuals have their own definitions of what defund means. For me, it's reallocation of funds. We see it happening in Austin, Texas, so on and so forth. But again, it's bigger than me. This is about the community, intergovernmental, intercommunity support and collaboration. So we have to move forward. And if we're going to continue to talk about reimagining public safety, and safety goes so far beyond just having access to police departments, we have to educate the community before we move forward and make decisions.
Thank you. Chibuike?
Yes. So when it comes to this defund question, I think we've all stated that it seems more of a political stunt or ploy, like a question thrown out there, knowing that it's going to cause more questions than answers for our community. So I don't really know if there will be a clear winner from what is being asked of us. I think that what we can do as a community is talk about this, have hard discussions with each other, figure out where do we want our community safety to be? What do we really want to imagine this to be? This can be all of what we wanted. Nobody says that the cops have to go. That's never, I think, been on the table here. I think we have to really think about safety, and that's the main thing. We want to reimagine safety. We want to make sure that our kids feel safe. We want to make sure that there is no trauma for those young people that do have these run-in with police officers. So we just need to have longer, harder, thought-out conversations and wait for the data to come back from that analysis that we sent out for, and then we can have real discussions to move forward.
Thank you. Juanta?
Peggy, can you please state the question?
Absolutely. If the resolution on defund the police is successful, how would you interpret its implications for Oak Park? If it's not successful, how would you interpret the result?
So I think we've all kind of danced around this question, and I believe that it needs to be, a direct answer would be that if it is successful, if defund is successful, then we do have to define what defund means. Was it successful in removing police officers? Was it successful in stopping crime? Was it successful in making sure that more mental health issues and domestic violence cases were? How exactly do we define success? And I think that would be, that's the bigger statement of it, is how are we defining this? How what's the meat of it? So the way the question is stated, you can't really answer it directly because it determines what success is and what it means to each person. So as it's stated, just defund the police, it's just too abstract a question to give a definite answer.
Thank you. Stephen?
Thank you. It's a difficult question, right? But I think we have to recognize that Resolution 2201 last August had defund the police, that specific language in it on item 1, and that was defeated by the board on a 5-2 vote. So now we're asking the public to weigh in on what those words meant, and I think the answer is going to be many people probably not going to know, right? Because exactly like everyone said, no one really has a clear interpretation of what that means. That said, I truly believe that Oak Park wants to lead on this issue. I believe that if we actually put together a commission on equity that works together with the police, that works together with the community, that we can actually develop some clear direction for the police that helps us figure out what the future of policing should look like. And we can become a model for other communities. Last thing I'll just say is I talked with a number of different former trustees on this issue who actually end up on both sides. And I think that shows that there's an opportunity here for us to do something great.
Thank you. Ravi?
Peggy. The term defund the police, I don't agree with that term at all. It is ill-conceived and it's divisive, and it does not frame the whole problem for solution seeking. So with that said, even if we have an outcome from this referendum, you can't do much with it because the hard work of really defining it and then reimagining our public safety, that work still remains regardless of what the outcome is going to be. So I agree with Stephen that we really have an opportunity here to put Oak Park on the map in terms of leading. And how I would propose that is the reimagination effort needs 3 considerations in my mind. So one is the police and the community should come together and be active participants of that reimagination process. The second piece is the path from where we are today to the path of that to the reimagined future. That has to be very specifically articulated for me to get behind that. And then the third thing is the success of that effort needs to be very clearly defined, and the outcome should be independently verifiable. So if those conditions are met, I think we have a path forward, but there is a lot of work ahead of us to get there.
Thank you. Anthony, you're going to start with this next question. When voting on approval for major redevelopment proposals, how much should the village board follow the recommendations of the Historic Preservation Committee, the Plan Commission, and existing zoning?
Yes, can you repeat the question one more time so I make sure I get every component? Thank you so much, Peggy.
When voting on approval for major redevelopment proposals, how much should the village board follow the recommendations of the Historic Preservation Committee, Plan Commission, and existing zoning?
Definitely. I mean, I think it's extremely important. We discuss community sustainability. Of course, sustainability includes developments and how developments, every issue is interconnected, how developments impact small business owners, entrepreneurs, large businesses, and community members. So I think the current board has marginalized and silenced our commissions. I think our commissions currently lack teeth. So when working with our commissions, when working with various stakeholders, I think we have to heavily place their work and their interest into our decision-making process. At the present point, I don't think we're doing that. Again, I think they've been silenced and marginalized in our commissions. There's a lot of confusion out there in reference to what our commissions are doing. So many people have resigned from commissions as we move forward. But Oak Park is not the city. We are not downtown Chicago. We are not Oak Brook. We are not Naperville. We are Oak Park. And I think we appreciate the historical context of our community. And when we're talking about development, we want to keep many of that spirit and soul within our community. So we have to work 100% with our commissions and place a lot of our decision-making on their recommendations.
Thank you. Chibuike?
I apologize. Can you say that question one more time?
Absolutely. When voting on approval for major redevelopment proposals, how much should the village board follow the recommendations of the Historic Preservation Committee, the Plan Commission, and existing zoning?
Yes. I think, it all, I always bring back living here for so long, the Oak Park that you live in. It's a very historic town. Everyone from the university that I went to, wherever I would travel and say I was from Oak Park, they knew Ernest Hemingway or Frank Lloyd Wright or something that reminded them historically of why they knew what Oak Park was. So there's a reason why we keep buildings a certain way or try to maintain that image and that look. It's why people are attracted to coming to Oak Park to do the walks throughout the community and check out our architecture. So there's definitely a thought that has to go behind all of our planning and our processes to make sure that we maintain what Oak Park has, but also we do need to remember that we're not building for the past, we are building for the future. So there are going to be some of those tough conversations of seeing compromise and where we can possibly grow and build together, and working with our planning and our zoning committee to make sure that we're not impeding on lifestyle, but making sure that we're making way for something new that all of us can appreciate.
Thank you. Juanta?
I am in agreement with what Chibuike just said. We're not building for the past, we're building for the future. I solidly agree with that. And I think we have to consider that when we're talking about development. Also, I agree with Anthony when he said about the commissions, about making sure we're utilizing our commissions. When these three things work together in harmony, then I think we come up with a good outcome. But oftentimes they don't. Oftentimes it's just one of them is weighed more heavily than the other. And so when we're collaborating together, I think we have better outcomes. And utilizing our commissions is a great place to start because we have to lean on them for information and make sure that all of our decisions are data-driven and make sure that we're considering the community as well, but making sure that they're data-driven and that we're building for the future. What was the Chibuike? That was awesome. I agree with that 100%.
Thank you. Stephen?
Thanks. It's interesting, just among those three things you described, the historic preservation, the plan commission, and the existing zoning ordinances, none of them actually has anything that actually relates to taste, right? And how we want to see Oak Park. And that's something that we're significantly lacking when new buildings are being put up. To answer your question specifically, I would personally like to see more focus on the zoning regulations, and have our zoning not have so many variances. For people who have watched Plan Commission meetings, they've heard for a number of the developments that we have going up, they continue to push closer to the street so they can maximize their square footage and as high as they can go. And that's something that we can control through zoning ordinance. That said, I think historic preservation plays an extremely important role, as does the Plan Commission. I really appreciate all the work that Ira Sims puts in. I will say though, for both of those commissions though, we really need to make sure we have the expertise to help us make important decisions.
Thank you. Ravi?
Thank you, Peggy. I think the most important thing is for us to have a shared vision of what a developed Oak Park in the future looks like, right? So we have to get behind that vision of what development means for Oak Park. Now, in that context, all these different parts can operate. So whether it is the Planning Commission as an advisory body for planning within the context of that broader vision, or it's the Historic Preservation Commission looking at preserving our heritage, and then the zoning standards that align with the broader vision. My personal preference, the historic piece is really important because Oak Park is a tourist destination and we get a lot of traffic and that enables our local businesses as well. So I think, that is my personal preference. But, I think all these three are really critical elements and each of them need to be tuned to meet a broader vision that we have for our community's development and a shared understanding of that vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucia?
One of the things I mentioned in my opening statement was my grandfather's example of civic engagement. And that is actually one of the reasons why my parents chose to move to Oak Park. And one of the reasons why my husband and I chose to return to Oak Park. That cannot really be understated. And so when we talk about these commissions and these committees that can have the expertise and the talent and the skill to really help inform our decisions, that's something that I take very, very, very seriously. As it relates to existing zoning, I think, I think new development should be in line with zoning limits. I think that to the extent that we grant variances, we certainly can do so, and those can be limited. And so I think we can certainly strike a balance between the two. And so I think there's a way that all three of those things that you mentioned in your question can exist harmoniously. We just have to really work to make that happen.
Thank you. Chibuike, you're going to start this next question off. The village has built up a significant balance in the sustainability fund. What are the projects that you value and would like to see prioritized in the coming 1 or 2 years to further sustainability and improve environmental conditions in the village?
Yeah. So when it comes to sustainability, like I said, I have a little bit of a background, but I'm no expert. I definitely can say that there are a lot of commissions that are already in place that can help us and have already suggested some pretty solid projects to move forward. I do believe, one, our small businesses need to be able to partake in part of the sustainability efforts to make our town more attractive to small businesses, but to also bring down some of their heaviest costs, heaviest burdens, as well as homeowners and renters, so that we can partake in parts of the trash compost programs that some buildings aren't allowed to partake in. We need to make sure that we are also allowing homeowners to apply for partial loans and grants to move towards sustainability within their own homes. And we need to have deeper discussions as neighbors as what we are doing as a neighborhood. Because before, I don't think everyone actually knows about our composting programs and hasn't had these deep discussions to understand what better we can be doing to service Oak Park.
Thank you. Juanta?
Peggy, can you please repeat that?
Absolutely. The village has built up a significant balance in the sustainability fund. What are the projects that you value and would like to see prioritized in the coming 1 to 2 years to further sustainability and improve environmental conditions in the village?
Okay, so when it comes to that, I think renters should be centered in this discussion, because I don't know if anyone is aware that renters are excluded, have been traditionally excluded from environmental issues in the village. Large buildings don't have to have recycling bins. They don't have an ability to compost. There's not much green space. There's not much room for planting. So I think for renters, maybe including us in that conversation and finding creative ways to involve 41% of the village in the sustainability would be a good place to start. And I would start by the green spaces that are available in front of the buildings. So making sure that we're developing the spaces that are in front of our buildings, because I don't think a lot of renters are involved in that process, and the homeowners of the renters, the owners of the buildings, are not as well. So maybe we could start there from a renting standpoint and getting gardens and things like that involved in the green spaces we have around the building. So I would start there.
Thank you. Stephen?
Thanks for this question. So as part of the Environment and Energy Commission, I spent a lot of time thinking about where we can utilize the money most effectively. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had an opportunity to utilize some of that money for the Green Alleys project, and actually voted that down because it was not what I thought was the highest and best use for those funds. So a couple areas that I think are really important that we need to really focus on is, although we don't have a great composting program for residents, the majority of our restaurants do not compost. I'd love to extend out to our restaurants the ability to have a composting program through a village-wide contract that we could put together with D200 and D97 so that we're potentially getting the best rates on that contract. I also think it would be great to start doing things with rooftop solar and rooftops in general. Green rooftops, I think, would be a great ability for great utilization for some of those funds to make sure that everyone's getting the advantage out of them.
Thank you. Ravi?
Thank you, Peggy. I serve on the Energy and Environment Commission, and I also serve, I'm a member of the Oak Park Climate Action Planning Team that's been functional for the last year. And our focus has been this, right? How do we use the sustainability funds to further Oak Park's climate action plan? And the proposal that is currently in front of the board is something that the Climate Action Planning Team put together. So I was intimately involved in studying several cities and their climate action plans to arrive at what the best use of funds is. And what we arrived at was focus on two things. So one is energy efficiency, because 50% of our footprint, greenhouse gas emissions, is contributed by residential buildings. And so energy efficiency is one piece. The second piece is in terms of renewables. And the third and fourth things are more about creating a long-range climate action planning team and also getting more granular with our greenhouse gas inventory so that we can make better decisions about this going forward. So that is how I see the next couple of years play out.
Thank you. Lucia?
So much of the next term is going to be about healing, right? Financial healing, healing from COVID. And I think with the Environmental Sustainability Fund, we have an opportunity to contribute to healing the planet. And so I'd like to see that. I think it's an opportunity there for some accountability from village staff to put together and to provide to the board the data needed for the board to make policy and program decisions that they need to make to further initiatives with focused on greenhouse gases from our aging housing stock. I think residential energy efficiency is going to be the main focus, and I think it should be the board's top priority with respect to the Sustainability Fund and our environmental efforts in the new term.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, thank you for this important question. There's a lot of nuance involved with this issue when we talk about sustainability and the environment. And these issues have existed even before the pandemic. So we're not just talking about surviving during the pandemic. We want to survive and thrive heading out of the pandemic. So in discussing this, we have to talk about clean energy resources. We have to talk about composting. We also have to talk about affordable housing, which I believe should be inclusionary housing when we talk about our renters and homeowners. That is a huge issue that exists. Food insecurity is also a huge issue in the Oak Park community, but we cannot just simply focus on the Oak Park community. When we talk about inter-community support, whether we're working with ComEd or others to come up with contracts, we should be involving the Austin community. We should be talking to our neighboring communities as well, because the health of one community impacts the health of others. I may not have served on the commission. I saw a statement in the chat, but I run a nonprofit full time, and we work on these issues, including we're going to be coming with a community fridge, partnering with Carnival, because we have to support our small businesses to address food insecurity. So we have these experiences, the nuances there. We just cannot focus on Oak Park. We also have to focus on the health of Austin and other neighboring communities in reference to environmental sustainability.
Thank you. Juanta, you're going to start this next question off. What do you think are the best ways for village government to promote the creation of affordable housing in Oak Park, and why?
Can you please repeat the question one more time?
What do you think are the best ways for village government to promote the creation of affordable housing in Oak Park, and why?
So I think the best way to support inclusionary housing, because we don't really have to create it, we have to support it because we have these structures in place already, is to make sure that we build small and not larger. A lot of money and a lot of planning have gone into large developments, and we see it all over the place. You got these big empty high-rise buildings in Oak Park that are popping up all over the place, and they don't really address the issues the people who really need affordable housing, because it's not just people who don't have or are low income. We're talking about disabled people. We're talking about our seniors. We're talking about middle income families. All of those people need affordable inclusionary housing. We're talking about my family of 6. We all need inclusionary housing. So I think by going smaller and not building bigger, focusing on more of 2 flats and 3 flats, we can provide the housing that we need for our village.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, I think we have to realize that the village is not a developer, right? So we can't say what we're going to build or not build. But I think the village actually has 2 routes, right? So when a developer comes, we can collect funds into an affordable housing fund that, which integrates Oak Park, but not necessarily integrates the buildings of Oak Park. The other possibility is we can mandate a portion of units in developments, for developers that come in, say they have to be affordable housing. We talked about this in the webinar I gave with Anthony Wood and Tom Bassadilli. London actually has been pretty successful in doing this and actually fast tracks buildings and developments where they have a higher proportion than what the city mandates. I think both of these can potentially work for different developers, but the real answer to the question is that long-term we have to figure out how to get our tax levy under control. And doing that is going to take intergovernmental cooperation so that we can make sure Oak Park becomes affordable to a broader set of people over the long term. Thanks.
Thank you. Ravi?
Yep, this is definitely a complex question, right? Because affordability and affordable housing both mean different things to different people. There is no one definition for it. And we have to support a broad spectrum of community members, whether it is the older generation, older adults, whether it is young people just getting into the workforce, or whether it is minority communities who are struggling. So all these people have very different definitions of affordability. Now, there are several choices in front of us that we've tested out, and then the inclusionary zoning, or taking the fund and placing it elsewhere in terms of making units that are specific for affordability. All these are options. All of them come with their own pros and cons. So, having looked at all of that and having thought about this very carefully for a long time, and I don't think there is one policy, option or a silver bullet that we can do on this. We just have to figure out many ways to allow people to progress through our society with giving a wide range of choices in terms of price options and size options in terms of housing within the community.
Thank you. Lucia?
I mentioned moving to Oak Park in my opening statement, and I was about to enter 7th grade when I moved here. And when my family moved here, we had no furniture except for bedroom furniture and a kitchen table. And that's because my parents couldn't afford it. The cost of moving to Oak Park put that much of a burden on them. So this issue of affordable housing is one that hits very close to home for me. I would be in favor of re-examining the inclusionary zoning ordinance, both with respect to the number of affordable units required, that percentage, as well as the fee in lieu provision. It's important to look at both, I think, because social programs cost money, and they are also connected to maintaining the diversity of our community. And so historically, the village has been able to fund several very important programs with that provision. And so I think it's time to re-examine the ordinance and to possibly make some amendments.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, another wonderful question. This is such a huge and nuanced issue that exists not only in Oak Park, but across the country. We founded Suburban Unity Alliance in 2016, and the lion's share of the funds that we raise goes to helping families within the Oak Park community and beyond pay for rent and pay for mortgage. Affordability is a huge issue. I'm more of a proponent of an inclusionary model. Many individuals have, noticed or identified the inclusionary zoning. It's important, whether we're talking about 30% within new developments. But as it currently stands, I believe we have a lack of transparency. I personally believe we have a slush fund where we provide subsidies to these new developers that come into our community that pay a one-time fee, and we're not able to necessarily track with true transparency and communication how these funds are being spent. To me, it looks like a checklist oftentimes where we dole out money without really tracking to see if we truly have inclusionary housing. Because again, rich socioeconomic communities where you have a variant of individuals on the economic spectrum are truly the communities that thrive. So again, inclusionary zoning, community intergovernmental support, and really looking at that qualitative and quantitative data to truly push forward an inclusionary model.
Thank you. Chibuike?
Yeah. Could you say the question one more time?
Absolutely. What do you think are the best ways for village government to promote the creation of no, sorry, wrong question. The village has built up, what question are we on? Yeah. What do you think are the best ways for village government to promote the creation of affordable housing in Oak Park? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Yes, that was it.
Sounds right.
That was it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So we definitely do need to look at the inclusionary zoning. We need to make sure that we are taking a deeper look into some practices that have been going on in Oak Park for some time that have not been inclusionary, that have made it more difficult for people of color to live in Oak Park. And if they do live in Oak Park, they end up becoming on the outskirts of Oak Park and almost feeling not welcomed here. So we definitely need to revisit some of these zoning rules. We need to revisit some of our housing funds and see where it is those funds could be best spent to make sure that there is oversight when we do have these larger developments. Like I said before, are we getting the best deal out of these larger developments? I'm not saying we have to go searching for them, but when they do come our way, that Oak Parkers are being taken first, our seniors, our most vulnerable people who live here, that we make sure that we work with our commissions to figure out how do we best utilize this money? How do we best put this towards a housing plan that can actually affect change here in Oak Park? I know that personally. My parents struggled to find a house here, and when they finally did, much like Lucia, it was one that we could barely afford to put furniture in. My wife always laughs at me when we drive down my block because my dad says, I could have almost got that house. I could have almost got that one. And it always hurts to hear how hard it is for Oak Parkers or people wanting to be Oak Parkers to live that dream.
Thank you. Stephen, you're going to start this next question off. What is your position regarding the various village volunteer citizens commissions? For example, how members are appointed and what their role should be in village government?
That's a great question. Before I answer that question, though, I do want to maybe just address the Chibuike's last statement, because as part of equity, I think it's also important, incumbent on us, to go out and seek out a diverse set of vendors for the village. That includes developers, construction. So if we have that opportunity, we should definitely not pass that opportunity up. Going back to your question on commissions, I feel like it's important that we actually have strong commissions, and commissions feel like they're heard. Having been on two, having felt ignored on one for sure, that I really wanted to make sure that a lot of the recommendations we had going forward for the Environment Energy Commission for a Sustainability Fund were going to be advanced at the board, and having going through multiple study sessions, it gets challenging, right? And there's a lot of endurance and stamina that you need as an individual. So I feel like we have to strengthen up our citizen commissions. We have to actively go out and hopefully recruit some of our younger people in the high school to participate in some of those citizen commissions as well, so they'll become our future leaders.
Thank you. Ravi?
Thank you, Peggy. So commissions, I think Oak Park is a very talented community, right? So we have a lot of talented community members, and our commission structure is one of our great strengths. And I feel that talented community should be represented effectively in the commissions, and they should be given enough latitude to make independent decisions on behalf of the community. So that is where participation actually comes in. So each of these commissions are there for a reason. So giving them the independence and latitude to make those, to provide the advice required for the board to make informed votes is the key. And I think at this point, too often it is not happening that way, or people feel underappreciated or underutilized on the board. So I would definitely like to change that. And that is the active recruitment process in terms of getting that talent on, vetting that talent and then getting them on the board and giving them the space to operate and be purposeful in serving. So that is what needs to happen.
Thank you. Lucia?
Hi. In my view, appointments should be made with input from the commissions themselves and from the Citizen Involvement Commission as well. I think appointees should have subject matter expertise, and I think those should really be the foundations for these appointments. We've talked quite a bit on this panel about the importance of the commissions, and so I think it's something that we can certainly we can use as a real resource, but I think foundationally it's got to have those two things to really be as effective as it possibly can be for the community. I think there are ways that we've seen it work well, and I think that there are ways that we've seen it work with not so well, and in ways that could certainly be improved. And I think those two items that I just mentioned, having appointees have subject matter expertise and input from the commissions themselves are ways to strengthen them.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, definitely. We have so many wonderful and knowledgeable individuals within our community, that are looking to serve. Service to others is the rent you pay, that have so many skills and experiences. And I do believe that our current commissions have been silenced. They have been marginalized and ignored. We have to empower our commissions. My grandma Leo always stated it takes a village to raise a child, and it truly takes a village to push a community forward. So we have to empower our commissions with a holistic wraparound support. I think it needs to be transparent in reference to the application process. I've talked to so many community residents that are looking to become involved and want to be on commissions, but they feel like the application process in reference to equity or lack thereof often excludes them. And how we define expertise, I think, is another thing we need to talk about when we're discussing equity and equity issues and inequality, because oftentimes how we look at expertise is you need certain degrees or you need to serve here or there. We have individuals that may have only been to high school, but I guarantee you they're knowledgeable. I guarantee you they're looking to serve. So we have to look at that application process as well, while also supporting our commissions, empowering them, and listening to them and letting them know that their input is valued.
Thank you. Chibuike?
Can you say that one more time? Repeat the question, please.
Sure. What is your position regarding the various village volunteer citizen commissions? For example, how members are appointed and what their role should be in village government?
I apologize. One more time. I've got my child running back here.
That's perfect. That's what life is right now.
Right.
What is your position regarding the various village volunteer citizens commissions? For example, how members are appointed and what their role should be in village government?
Okay. Yeah. I think we always come back to this. We live in Oak Park. It's a town that is filled with tons of people who have extraordinary skill sets, from our old people to our young people. We have this ability, and we have these skills, and we have these commissions, and these commissions are meant to service us as individuals here living in Oak Park. So what better way to show how much you love Oak Park than to serve on these? But to serve on these things, much like in America, it's a job application. It's a process. And sometimes processes are skewed, and sometimes people don't get on those commissions. And sometimes those commissions are just filled with a bunch of friends. So we need to make sure that these commissions best represent us, but also, yes, that people are qualified. There are tons of us, even the people running up here, who have tons of experience in lots of different fields that all can impact how this village moves forward. So there isn't just one perfect place for some people. So I do urge people that have the urge to go out there, and I thank our commissions for everything that they do, but we do need to utilize them more. We do need to give their voices power, and we do need to make sure that we work as a team with all of our commissions when we are looking at ways to impact Oak Parkers, and make sure that we're giving them the proper respect.
Thank you. Juanta?
Hi. So commissions. So I applied for a commission and it met on a Wednesday night. I was in grad school. And so I was in my last semester of grad school, and there was no way I could meet on a Wednesday night for this commission. And so I think as we've talked about the process of a commission, that we need to consider that different people, not everyone is an at-home consultant, and people have to work, and some people work 9 to 5 jobs. Some people work the next shift. So we have to make sure that our commissions are in line that reflect the people that are in our community. And it's not all just skewed for people who are able to work from home, because not everyone has the opportunity. What we do now because of the pandemic, but even now, a lot of people are not working from home. So we need to consider all those things in our process and make sure that the commissions are equitable. And I think that's when you have an equitable commission, we have to stop this culture of elitism in Oak Park, where you have to be this or that in order to serve. I mean, everyone should be able to serve the village that we love. And it shouldn't be, if you don't have this degree, if you don't have that degree, if you can serve on this commission, then you cannot serve your village.
Thank you. Ravi, you're going to start this next question. Are you committed to supporting the Oak Park Regional Housing Center and keeping Oak Park in an intentionally integrated community? What should be its future?
Great question. So if I talk about my relationship with Oak Park Regional Housing Center, when I first came to Chicago, I called up Oak Park Regional Housing Center because Oak Park was a place I wanted to live, and it was between the 2 airports in downtown. So I called up Oak Park Regional Housing Center, and I found my first rental property in Oak Park through them. So I have a personal connection with my journey in Oak Park, which started with Oak Park Regional Housing Center. I support them wholeheartedly and their entire mission because they are a fundamentally great organization, and Athena does a fantastic job of managing it. The few things that I would do, concrete things that I would do for Oak Park Regional Housing Center, is help them step into the future in terms of technology investments to bolster their backbone in terms of being able to further their mission properly, and then also fund them so that they can actually really enable the mission that they have. So I'm all for giving them what is required, the support that is required to enable their mission.
Thank you. Lucia?
Yes. So the Regional Housing Center was a resource years ago my husband and I had tapped into. We rented in Oak Park just for a year before we were sort of squeezed out, before our building turned condo and we just couldn't afford to stay there. I definitely am in favor of the board supporting the Regional Housing Center. I think it does great work. I think it does important work. I think the support should be one of strategic partnership, where the center's prescribed goals are actively advanced and supported by the board. And so the specifics of this support, I think, should be determined by the board. I think that's got to, unfortunately, I think that's got to wait for those 3 new trustees that are sitting in, they're going to be sitting in those 3 seats in the new term, along with the 3 existing trustees. But I think that it needs to be wholehearted. I think the support needs to be strategic, and I think it needs to be clear.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, definitely. Another great question. I 100% support the mission of the Regional Housing Center. But as was mentioned earlier, we are indeed moving. This is 2021. Technology is changing the landscape of our environment. The pandemic will have everlasting impact. So as a board, again, we have to work with an equitable, collaborative effort with the Regional Housing Center to not only support it, hold it accountable, look at data, quantitative and qualitative, to understand the effectiveness, and using that data and using those collaborative efforts, work to improve the efforts of the Regional Housing Center to truly meet the needs of the community. We've met with stakeholders and representatives from the housing center. There have been issues. Of course, anything there's an issue. That doesn't mean you don't love it. That doesn't mean you don't support it. So we want to support it while working together, looking at the data with all stakeholders in the community to improve it, because we simply just don't want to throw money at something because it has a great mission statement. We want to make sure that we're giving money to something that's effective as well. And I truly believe the Regional Housing Center can be effective and will continue to be effective with true collaboration and support.
Thank you. Chibuike?
Yep. I fully, I fundamentally support what the Regional Housing Center stands for and everything that they're about. I can tell you, coming to Oak Park, like I said, it was a very hard time for my parents to find a place here. They did not know of the Regional Housing Center or how to access them or how to use their funds or you just use their resources. So same went for me when applying for any of the apartments in Oak Park. I had a tremendous amount of problems trying to find a place, getting denied. even though I actually had the ability and funds to pay for all of the places that I was applying for. So you always wonder, what is communicated with the residents of Oak Park. I continuously see people telling us about the transparency, not knowing that there was information here or there, or how to access that information. So when it comes to the Regional Housing Center, we need to move it into the 21st century. We need to make sure that these things are able to be reached at multiple levels, not just on one spot, because that's not going to cross off all the X's for us and all the boxes. We need to make sure that we're getting creative and innovative, and also that we are making a lot of what affordability is for these people, not just what their rent is. We have to see, how do we make internet? How do we make their home television, these other services that they're going to take advantage of? We have to figure out ways to help subsidize some of that cost so that Oak Park is an affordable place.
Ms. Peggy, you're muted. I think you said something, but you're muted.
Sorry, that was Juanta, you're next, sorry.
Can you please repeat the question, Peggy?
Absolutely. Are you committed to supporting the Oak Park Regional Housing Center and keeping Oak Park in an intentionally integrated community? And what should be its future?
Okay, so I support integration and keeping our community integrated. The Oak Park Regional Housing Center, as it stands, as it is right now, I've been a renter all my life here. It's never helped me do anything. It's only confused my process. So as it is right now, I think that it could be revamped and reimagined. So if I'm going to support it and agree to commit myself to supporting it, it should invest in things like helping with home ownership programs, rental assistance programs. It shouldn't just act as a survey to take your information and send you on a wild goose chase for an apartment that you can't afford and you'll never get. So I've been through that process before, where you go in there, you tell your story, you try to get a place, and they give you this sheet to go look at apartments, and everywhere you go, they reject you for credit scores that are 720 and for, security deposits that are like 3 times what you can afford. The Regional Housing Department, as it stands, is just good for integration, but not good for sustainability and affordability. So.
Okay, thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Juanta, you had that experience. I've never used the Oak Park Regional Housing Center, but going back to 2014, Bobby Raymond and trustees gave this great talk about how Oak Park Regional Housing Center in the 60s and 70s is really what made this community as integrated as it is. If you look at just over the last 4 years, from 17 to 21, their budget's gone from $630,000, the shared budget with the village, to just $430,000. So they're not getting as much support as they need from the village. I think we do have an opportunity to take the Oak Park Regional Housing Center back to where it needs to be. I love Ravi's idea of trying to make it a really competitive force to a lot of the other real estate agents that are in the market, and also Lucia's point of trying to actually come to a strategic alignment with them. If they're getting money from the village, they should also have some metrics that we're going to hold them accountable to.
Thank you. All right, this will be our last question before closing statements. And Lucia, you will be starting it off. What ideas do you have for helping smaller and locally owned businesses survive and thrive in Oak Park? We know that our village relies upon property taxes and sales tax. So how can we make sure that our smaller and locally owned business owners survive and thrive in Oak Park?
I think this is a question that's got really broad application, because so many of us Oak Parkers have our favorite small business, right? Our favorite coffee shop, our favorite clothing store, our favorite florist. And so this is a question that's got an application that really hits all of us. I would support the creation of a business liaison position within Village Hall. And the purpose of that position, as I envision it, would be to assist small businesses in navigating village ordinances, approval process, looking at capital sources, business plans, and just any other additional resources that our small local businesses might need. I would also continue to support the village-wide marketing effort that's underway. That's helping our businesses get the visibility that they need during these times when so much of our life is virtual. And so So anyway, I'll end there. I see I'm coming up at my time, but those would be two initiatives that I would support to assist small local businesses.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, definitely. You know, small businesses and entrepreneurship as well. They're the backbone of our communities. And even prior to the pandemic, I don't believe that small businesses and entrepreneurs have been receiving the support from the community that they need. They need to be placed at the forefront because they truly drive communities. So we have multiple ideas that we're looking to collaborate with, you know, from set aside space and new developments to adopting a business diversity ordinance, adaptive reuse of vacant buildings, economic incentives, small businesses purchasing preferences, identifying access to future capital, creating a holistic model to support new small businesses and entrepreneurs with ideas. In the city of Chicago, they do it where they use vacant space to allow small businesses and entrepreneurs to set up shop and engage with the community to test out. And we've been working with small businesses. We've issued $500 non-payable back micro grants to small businesses in need. We're partnering with Carnival coming up with our, community fridge to address food insecurity while supporting them as well. But we need holistic approaches to small business support, and we need to place them at the forefront because small businesses and entrepreneurs are truly the backbone of our community, and we're going to continue to do so.
Thank you. Chibuike?
So for a number of years, that was my job, was helping small businesses work on their communication needs and to helping them grow within tough times. I worked on the South Side, worked on the West Side, and worked in the neighboring suburbs. And a lot of what you analyze is pain points, these problems that small businesses go through that nobody listens to. Continuously sitting down with the small businesses in Oak Park, I've heard the same stories of, there's hoops that they're jumping through for inspections. There's hoops that they're jumping through to work on some of their policies. So we're continuously having these issues. So we need to listen. We need to sit down and actually listen to our small businesses and ask them what they personally need. It's a case-by-case situation, not something that we can just throw something at. So we do need to make sure that, one, we're working on federal grants and loan programs. Two, that we're helping them with low interest capital loans. Three, that we're helping to put together a small business fund that we can use by taxing some of these bigger businesses like Pete's when they come to Oak Park, rather than giving them $6 million in grant money that could be lifting up our small business community. So while people are hurting, we have to make sure that we are hearing them and we are helping them, not saying, hey, I can't hear you with all these dollar signs in my face. We need to make sure that we're addressing the problems right now.
Thank you. Juanta?
Can you repeat the question, please?
What ideas do you have for helping smaller and locally owned businesses survive and thrive in Oak Park?
Okay, so I have two cousins that just opened businesses in Oak Park, one in Austin, one in Oak Park. And the complaint that my cousin of Thrive Life Wellness Center said is that when she came here, she talked to a bunch of different people at the village that were not exactly speaking to each other. So she was getting different information before she could open. And so that kind of hindered, it put her opening off a little bit. And my other cousin said it was just too expensive to open a business in Oak Park. So he'd rather go to Austin, and he did. And so that kind of made me sad that he's a resident in Oak Park, but he chose to open his business in Austin. And so I think what we need to do is make sure we have streamlined information and communication with the people who are small business owners, that we're making these things accessible, because it's great to have all this programming, but if it's not accessible to the people, then they can't use it. And so I think when we're looking through an equitable lens, one way to do it is we have business owners who are English is their second language. And it's just a complicated, grants and everything that are available are too complicated for them to understand. So maybe we could streamline it, make it accessible and easier for them to obtain.
Thank you. Stephen?
Thanks. So last week I was able to preview a 4-part business plan, recovery plan that I had for Oak Park. I'll go through it really quickly here. But first, we have a recovery task force that needs to become a competitiveness task force. That should be a group that's standing, ready to help businesses continually. Exactly to what Juanta said. If someone's having even an inkling of trouble, we try to get out there and help them. Second, we should develop some incentive plans, increase utilization of local and neighboring talent to power some sustainable business growth. And those incentives can be decreases in business permits, they can be decreases in licenses, or we could try to figure out something a little bit more creative. If we basically employ people within our community and surrounding communities, and we become the wave that lifts all boats. Third, we have to help our businesses compete from e-commerce and some of the national franchises, as Chibuike said. We need to think about is, can we actually have Pete's do something where they're giving back to the community for all the stuff that we've given them. Last is we need to help incubate businesses here through a combined effort of giving them access to capital through CDFIs or SBA loans.
Thank you. Ravi?
Thanks, Peggy. So this question is not a theoretical exercise for me at all. So Takeout 25 is a creative marketing platform that grew out of my desire to help the small businesses survive through the pandemic. And it saved businesses, it has saved jobs, and it's also empowered our community with the tools required to help our local businesses. So this innovation is now being adopted by multiple neighborhoods and states and all through the country. So that is the kind of thought leadership and innovation that I will bring to the board table. Now, one comment from Jimmy Chen, who owns Poke Burrito, a local restaurant, will stick with me for my life. He said, Takeout 25 is so much more helpful than the government stimulus. The stimulus is a one-time shot, but Takeout 25 has given me customers that will help me not just survive the pandemic, but allow me to thrive beyond the pandemic. And that, to me, is how you foster economic recovery in a community.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go with closing statements now, and we'll do it again. Anthony, you're going to start off with your closing statement. You can expand upon some other answer that you gave, or if you just want to make closing remarks, that's fine. It's up to you.
No, again, I truly thank you, Peggy. You did a wonderful job this evening. Thank you so much for facilitating League of Women Voters, everyone and all stakeholders who took time out of their schedule. It's truly an honor to be here, and it's truly an honor to engage in this opportunity to serve the community. And we're in survival mode right now. That's why we are here. Clearly, the direction we have been taking has not been working. There are so many individuals that wake up every day wondering, will they be able to pay their mortgage? Will they be able to pay their rent? Will they be able to put food on the table? When they go outside, do they feel safe and welcome in their own community? We have an opportunity to shift from survival to thriving. When we talk about sustainability, when we look at equity, the environment, affordability, inclusionary housing, and true representation in our community, Oak Park has that capability. Many communities see it and talk about it, but they don't have the capability to do it. We do. And that's why we are all running. I truly appreciate each and every one of you for stepping up and running for these seats coming up in April 6th. But again, we have an ability to make Oak Park the community that we want it to be. And I truly love this community. And I always say, when you love something, you don't just accept status quo. You expect the best from it, you hold it accountable, and you push it to improve. And that's what we're truly doing with the Oak Park community. Thank you all.
Thank you. Chibuike?
I'm going to try to be really quick. I'm going to read this quote that I like. It says, to get something you never had, you're going to have to do something you never did. Because imagine you're on your deathbed and standing at your bed are the ghosts representing your unfilled potential, the ghost of the ideas you never acted on, the ghost of the talents you didn't use. And they're standing around your bed angry and upset. They're disappointed, saying they came to you because you could have brought us to life. So what I'm saying when I hear that is, Oak Park has so much potential. Not only I hear it through these chats about the commissions and the people pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into this Oak Park that they love, but the people up here that are also representing Oak Park here and want to do better for this Oak Park. We want to make sure that we are living up to the potential that we have. So many great minds sit on this table and sit throughout Oak Park. If we can come together and stop being so divisive over issues that make no sense, we can make a better Oak Park. But if we don't, we're going to crumble together, and we're going to be at our deathbeds so upset that we couldn't come together at this pivotal point in time.
Thank you. Juanta?
I guess my closing remark would be that all of the candidates are great. I think everyone here loves Oak Park, and everyone here wants the best for Oak Park, right? I'm here because there is something missing at our board. And when people are talking about fighting for the greater good, they're talking about renters, they're talking about affordable housing, they're talking about sustainability. I'm talking about these things because I'm living these things. I am a renter. I am a middle income family. I have a family of 6. I'm a wife of a teacher. So I know these issues. I know Oak Park. I've been here the majority of my life. So when I get at the board table, I'm fighting for myself. I'm fighting for other families. I want to help these issues because that's what we do as Oak Parkers. We serve. And this is not a position of power. This is a position of service. And so I believe that if you love something, you serve it. And so I'm going to bring all of that with me to the board table, all of that experience, all that history, and all of that love for my community. And that's what I bring to it.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah. Thanks, Peggy. And thanks to all the other candidates who had a chance to be here today. Look, yeah, as I said before, we're living in an unprecedented time. Things do have the opportunity to change for the better. Our community is going through a reckoning, as we've heard, and the world is watching what we do. In the next 4 years, we have the opportunity to solve multiple problems in ways that can make Oak Park a model for other communities. I think we're going to need to do 3 things exceptionally well. One, we have to make sure the village is going to reopen safely. Having a robust vaccine rollout that will hopefully culminate this fall and mental health programs that will help support villagers as they adjust to the changed world. Second, we have to help our business community build back better with a more diverse set of businesses moving in to Oak Park because it's a great place to do business. Third, we do have to be aggressive in tackling and solving issues that create and maintain disparities in Oak Park, including affordable housing, development, policing, and budgeting. I hope that you'll elect me to be your trustee, and if you do, I promise I'll bring you my very best to the board table for you, for all Oak Park, today and tomorrow.
Thank you. Ravi?
Thank you, Peggy, and the rest of the panelists. So when a diverse set of individuals, as we see on this panel, are all working passionately towards a goal, that goal and the collaboration energy are worth protecting. So Oak Park is special and it is worth protecting. However, the pandemic has left us in a precarious spot, and it will need relevant experience, thoughtful leadership, and calm determination to get us through this. I believe I offer these critical attributes that are required to build back stronger and better Oak Park. I stand for inclusive, visionary solutions. So please visit me at www.raviparakkat.com to learn more about what I can do for you. And vote for me on April 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucia?
Myra Selby. This is a name you may not recognize. She isn't an Oak Park resident and she won't be on our April ballot. She is the first woman and the first African-American to serve on the Indiana Supreme Court. She was President Obama's pick for a federal judge seat, but that was held up by congressional Republicans. That seat was later filled by former President Trump's nominee, Amy Coney Barrett. Justice Barrett actually now sits on the U.S. Supreme Court with a lifelong appointment to fulfill her ultra-conservative leanings, already weakening women's access to abortion medications, a case heard just last month. A decision that might have gone very differently if Myra Selby had gotten her nomination. This is why this story is important for us. We are at a critical defining moment in our choice of leaders. We must consider the future of our community, both in the long and short term. The next board members must be committed to leading with compassion, critically analyze information, and engage in solution-focused dialogue. I hold myself accountable to these commitments, and I hope you will join me in doing the same on April 6th.
Well, candidates, thank you very much. Thank you all for participating in sharing your insightful thoughts during this forum. I have learned a lot from all of you, and I think this will be a tough choice for the community. And we certainly thank you for stepping up to serve your community. Oak Park isn't easy. We all know that, and serving on it will be a challenge for you. But I think all of you have proved to be up to the task. If you are remaining candidate forms are listed on our website, lwvoprf.org. This coming Saturday will be the District 97 candidate forum, and we will still have forums for the Oak Park Township and for all the River Forest governmental bodies that are having contested elections. Again, I want to thank the Oak Park Library for helping and doing all the technical assistance on this. We couldn't do it without you. And we hope you all will go out to vote. Early voting does start on March the 10th. and Election Day is April 6th. Thank you again, everybody, and have a pleasant rest of the evening.